replace the water bottle. You'll never, it looks like a water bottle.
Do you think I should sit?
It's up to you. It's just close-ish to it, so it'll get
Okay, so we're here tonight to talk about the upcoming levy, which will be in May on the 19th, and kind of go through the finances of the district, understand how we got where we got, why we have selected the items that we selected. Mr. Farmer is going to, I'm not supposed to call him that. Roy is going to talk about the audit and the finances of our district so we have a better understanding. He has a knack for that, and I appreciate him coming in. We've been working on that together. I'm just going to yell. And I think that it will be okay. So,
shouldn't we shut them off and then she just has hers on?
Yeah, that could help.
So just to look at what our new district is going to look like as we go forward, our anticipated enrollment should be 479 at GEMS, 264 at GHS. So we'll have around 740 students. These numbers reflect what we currently have. So right now we have 46 full-time teachers, 47.5 non-certified staff that work for the district. And those include instructional paras. Those are people who work with special education students. They're the people who work with IRI, so the reading improvement, and RTI. Those are our secretaries, our custodial and maintenance staff, and our district office staff. We currently have 13.5 bus drivers, and we have, I don't know how you have half a bus driver, but we do. And administrators, 2. We currently have 2, and we'll kind of talk more about our options there going forward. What we've done a lot of is try to look at how we can spend the money we get from the state the best way that we can. So as we talk through our plans for the future, I might come back to this, so reference 2 right now, and we'll discuss it later. So for those of you unfamiliar with the funding of a school district in Idaho, 68% of our funding comes from the state. 8% of it is federal, and that's primarily IDEA and title money. So that would be Title II, Title III, Title IV. Those are the special programs. Anything that comes from the federal funding model, we have to expend the money, and then we submit a request and draw down from the funds that we are granted. So we apply for a grant from the federal government for IDEA, which is special education. They look at the number of students we have qualified. They tell us how much money we have to spend, and then we work within that realm. One of the interesting parts about that is another funding source kind of would be Medicaid, and it's not up there, but what you have to be very careful of is you can't have somebody work in federal and charge Medicaid, so it's a whole thing. The last one is local, and this indicates what's most common in districts in the state of Idaho. It's around 24-25%. Okay. So why a levy is needed. So in the state of Idaho, and I think you all know this, I'll stand up, is that we are going to be funded for about 40 teachers. That's based on a lot of things. That's based on how many students we have in our school district. About every 20 students, we get a teacher. Sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't, right? Sometimes you have a class that has 55 kids. Well, you only got 2 teachers for 55 kids because you didn't hit 60. Sometimes you have a group that's 18. That's not good either. So we're always trying to shift teachers. Do we need more 3rd grade? Do we need more 2nd grade? So we move teachers throughout the building every year to try to utilize our teachers to the best potential that we have. The other place that we have more teachers than is typical would be kindergarten. So the state of Idaho says kiddos only need to go to kindergarten half a day. We have kindergarten all day, and we'll go into that more later, but so that's an additional teacher. So when I said before we have 46, we are currently over by 6 teachers than what the State Department of Education thinks we need as a district. That's something that every time we have retirement or we have an opportunity to move down a teacher, we will carefully look to see if we need as many teachers as we have. It's common for rural school districts to have more teachers than they need for 2 reasons. One, we need people who are specifically endorsed. So we can't have somebody teaching secondary science if they don't have a secondary science endorsement. So at some point you end up with teachers because you have to have specific people teach specific classes.
And just to clarify, when you say more teachers than we need, that's not what you mean. You mean more teachers than the state pays for. We need those
Correct.
teachers.
Right.
Yeah.
More teachers than the state says we need.
Right.
It's not what we need, but it's
Right.
what they say they will fund for us. And then all day kindergarten. And the other thing, of course, is like special education teachers. Depending on how many special education students we have, that's how many, we have to balance caseloads. We can't have teachers who have 40, 50 kids on a caseload. We have to have reasonable amounts of special education students on each one. So for example, we need a preschool special education teacher. They might not have a ton of kids, so that's our job as a district to figure out other ways to utilize that person wisely so that we're not overstaffed. It's always our job to look at how we staff and how we can utilize those people. So the next one is transportation costs. And I think it's important to recognize there are two types of miles when you drive a bus. There's good miles. These are miles that are reimbursed by the State Department at 85%. So you have a field trip, we go out and do that. You want me to put that closer to my face?
No, it's all right. You're doing good.
We have a field trip, we go do that, there's grades, there's a whole checklist, we check it. If it's a good field trip, if it meets all the requirements, we can submit it to the state, we can get reimbursed for 85%. If it's a bus route, we can get reimbursed for 85%. If it's an extracurricular activity, we do not get reimbursed by the state for those travel miles. Those are not covered by the State Department of Education. So any travel that we do in association with a sport, a co-curricular, and extracurricular activity, those are not covered by the funding we get from the state. And just so you know, we pay drivers $23 an hour, whether they're driving or whether they're waiting. So if they drive a bus and they sit all day at a baseball tournament, we pay them for the whole day, then they get back in that bus and they drive home. And that's how that works. So that costs us a lot of money to do it that way. GEMS behavior and discipline support. So one of the items on the levy that you'll see is we would like to get a behavior specialist at GEMS to work with special education and general education students. It's not just one or the other. We have problems in all areas. So I don't want people to think it's another special education funding thing. But help us create behavior plans, functional behavior assessments, help teachers gain the skills they need to work with challenging students, and provide enough locations so that when a student needs to be removed from a classroom, we're capable of doing that so that learning can continue, which is a big goal of mine. One of the things we want to do is talk about what is expected to be in school and to teach those behaviors. And I think it's important that when students are disruptive or when we have behavior problems, the learning loss happens both to the child who is misbehaving, but also to every other student in that classroom. And that's the problem. Both problems are real, but we want to make sure that one student isn't disrupting the learning of 27 other students or 25 other students. But not by just removing them, but by training everybody how to deal with them well and how to help them be successful. One of the things we were talking about is a slow start for kindergarten, so that we have time to teach kindergartners how to behave at school so that they know what the expectations are. Another issue on the levy would be our libraries. So currently we staff a librarian at both locations. The librarian at GEMS is in the library. Kids come in, they have time in the library, they work with her, she does projects, and they do all sorts of things. At the high school, however, the librarian is multifaceted in that she also is the leader of all of the Idaho Digital Learning Academy, or Alliance now's learning. And so there's been a cutback on what those kind of classes are, but we have somebody in the library currently that checks grades every day, helps students get their tests going, and works through those kinds of projects. So what we're talking about when we're talking about losing the librarian that's on the levy, what we're saying is that our attendance secretary would work out of the library and do 2 roles at the high school. There would still be someone here, but we would have to go down a secretary. Special education costs. So like we discussed before, the money that we get from the federal government and from the state when we use our teaching positions that we have for our special education teachers covers about 25% of special education. We anticipate having about $900,000 of uncovered special education costs next year. What that means at this point is that special education costs are now supplanting general education expenses. So if you think about that, if they don't give us enough money to cover special education and we're required by law to do special education, we would have a lot more money for things like curriculum or other activities. But we are required by law to cover the needs for special education, and that's important. I think, though, that it is an unsustainable model in that the State Department of Education in Idaho does not provide any more money for a special education student than they do for a general education student. It's exactly the same.
And just as a comment, that is a huge budget item for the school, and it's getting bigger. And we have a federal mandate. The federal judges love to litigate cases on people who are not being served in this area. And if you've ever heard the word unfunded mandate, that's what that is. We're mandated to do it, but they don't send any money with the mandate.
And I think when IDEA came out, the anticipation was they were going to cover 40% of special education costs, but they have never come even close to covering 40% of special education.
Well, and part of that is the services that you offer to Saints Peter and Paul, to the preschools, you're not just offer any child that comes and wants to be tested if they're enrolled.
They don't have to be enrolled. They can come and be tested.
Okay.
We've tested lots of kids in the community that really don't have any intention of being enrolled in our school, but we're required by law to do special education testing on anybody who reaches out to us. And to be honest, special education testing costs around $1,500 to $2,000 every time we do it. So it's not something that we can control. The next thing that's going to be a real challenge is, I'm sure most of you know Michelle Tostin, the world's best speech teacher. Michelle Tostin is retiring at the end of this year. She has about 80 kids on her caseload. So for the first time ever, we're going to look at trying to purchase online speech and language therapy services for all 80 students. We are anticipating that to be 300% greater than it was when we paid Michelle Tostin. The bigger part of that that's a real challenge is that when you hire someone and they work in your district, you get salary-based apportionment. You get a certain amount of service providers, like the 40 teachers, you get 6 other people who can work in district, like a nurse or an SLP or an OT. When we do online, we do not receive the state funding. We no longer get that money from them. Yes.
And we're doing online because we don't have the option.
Right. We've been offering and had open an SLP position for 3 years now. We've had no applicants. And that's pretty typical. But it's hard to get people with those specific qualifications that want to work in a rural district. And so that's where we're at. Of course, if we got one, I'd love to hire them. And we do all that. But at this point, we're doing research on the best hourly rate we can pay. That's where we're at. And it's taking a lot of time. And then, not to mention that once you have online services that are provided, we have to hire paraprofessionals to work with the person on the computer. So it's not as if the student can sit down on a computer by themselves. Somebody comes in, sets it up, works the schedule, moves from school to school, and does all of that. So that's an additional cost, also not funded by the State Department of Education in any way. And then we get to all-day kindergarten. So the state funds half-day kindergarten, which means we would have 1 teacher in the morning and 1 teacher in the afternoon. Our community has, for as long as I can remember, well, let's see. When do you think we last had half-day? It's been a while.
1990.
No, I think Booker went to half-day. I think Soph and Booker went half-day.
And went half-day.
Who did? Yeah. Yeah. So it's been at least 20 years since we have had half-day, I think. But half-day kindergarten. So let's talk about that. Why do we do it? Why do we think it's important? Firstly, as kids go through school, we receive funding based on how many of them are proficient. When you only bring a student in for half-day, you lose the potential for a lot of those struggling learners to be proficient as soon as they possibly could be. So we're not bringing in the money. We talk about behavior in our primary building or elementary school. I always think that we can't assume that students who have not necessarily been in a preschool program or been outside of their home a ton, and these are littles, right? They're little kids, that's what you want. They don't know how to act in kindergarten, and so it takes longer to teach them how and what we need them to do. The whole first 6 weeks of kindergarten is, okay, this is how we line up. This is how we do the hair stare. Don't touch anybody with your hands. This is how we wash when we go to the bathroom. It's all about learning that stuff. So we firmly believe that it's important to have those kids in there. We believe that it's better for their social emotional development, and it's easier to transition to first grade. And to be honest with you, it's more practical for our families. It's a real challenge to have kiddos come to school half a day and have families at work what they're going to do with their students for the other half of the day. Now, we can do a slow start, or we can think about those kinds of ideas where we say every kid will come 2 days a week the first month of school while we teach them how to act and how to get from place to place and all of that. But that is a short-term solution to improve behavior. Really, we need our students to be in school all day in kindergarten, and that has been successful for us. Secure rural schools money. So it's also often known as forest funds. It's a great area of confusion. So what we anticipate people, the Idaho County Commissioners dispersing to us in the next few weeks is $730,000. And that was one of the ways that we were able to drive down the cost of the levy. We don't want to get money in and say, we're not going to use that. We want to use the money that people give us to make things reasonably cost and to assure everybody we're trying our best. But how much they're going to give us and when we're going to get it is always the great mystery. And last year we didn't get it, well, no. Last year we got 10% of that amount. So anyone who's really good at math, okay, well, yeah. So, no, but that's not true because this represents 90% of the total. So that's why I was like, it's not that easy. I can do the 10, but this represents 90% of the total. So we received 10%, and now we receive we will receive $730,000. We don't know what we're going to receive for 2025. We don't know what we'll receive for 2026. We do know that the money has been renewed, so that's hopeful. But how much money that will bring to our district, it's uncertain. It's one of the reasons, I'll be honest, that running a levy in November always is a challenge because we don't really know how much money we're going to get. So hopefully, say that again?
But even in May, we don't know.
Correct. Well, we know this first amount. We should have this amount. They have confirmed it and sent a letter to us, and that has been a confirmed amount that's what we're going to receive. So that's.
So it could be more or less?
For the 2025 and 2026?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So what I would hope is that when we pull in 2025, it allows us to better estimate our levy next November. We don't spend it down. We set it and say, this is how we're going to estimate our levy next year. Because this year we didn't have any knowledge because it had been a whole year since it was not renewed. So we had to run a levy in November based on what we anticipated needing. We now know we'll get this amount of money, and with some budgetary planning, we've been able to reduce it to $805,000. As far as SRS funds go and how they've been used, we currently do have SRS funds in our investment pool. And I think Mr. Farmer will discuss that, but those monies are our 90-day contingency. And there's financial reasons why we are required by law and recommended by our auditors to have it. But when we look at all the funds that Mr. Farmer's going to bring up today about the audit, you have to remember that each of those funds will be divided by either 68, 52, 42, or 72, 28. Everything we have is going to be divided between the two districts. So last year's audit does not reflect the money we will have in this coming year. It reflects the money we had at the end of last year. And we'll do an audit at the end of this year, and it will again reflect the money we have as 244. All of those monies have to be split, and each section of the deconsolidation plan has a different percentage that we have to use to break those funds down. So you might look at student-occupied buildings. That's a different percentage that we have to use than hot lunch money, which is a different percentage than SRS funds. And so as we get closer to the date, we will slowly start to split those monies out once we have paid out all of the bills that still exist within any of those categories. So it's a rather complicated process that we're in the middle of doing. SRS, oh, I wasn't quite done. So I was just going to speak, most of you know what SRS funds are, but I'll just speak to it really quickly. That's money we receive from the federal government due to the forest land that we have in our county. So because that land can't be taxed, because it's owned by the federal government, this is in lieu of those kinds of funds that would normally come into a district that had property that was owned by private citizens. So that's how that works. And it's been going on for quite some time. Here's some other things that we still don't know about. Legislative holdbacks. I think the legislative session is about done, but I always say that and then I'm never quite sure. Next week we're supposed to have a meeting to hear about those. One of the cuts was $7.5 million to transportation. I don't know how that will impact us, but it's something that's real and out there. $13.5 million was cut from the IDLA funding. That's a lot of money. And I know it doesn't impact our teachers, but every time a student took a class like sign language or dual credit anything, they took that through IDLA, and all of that coursework, well, not all of it, but a good portion of it will no longer be available. So I do feel like there's going to be impacts to our students' education due to the lack of funding there. It has also allowed us to, say, not have a speech teacher on hand. This isn't something we've had to do, but it has happened at CV. So they just put everybody in IDLA speech because they don't find someone to teach it in their facility. We have never faced that here, but it is used by rural districts that way. We can't find a teacher, we put them in an online course. We have been very lucky and not had to do it, but it's one of the ways that IDLA really helped small schools. And then a $3 million cut in virtual technology funds. I don't know what that means exactly, but because I'm not the technology person. No? Okay. The other thing we don't know about is HB 292. And for those of you who don't know, that's property tax relief money. And it does look like it's going to continue, but property tax relief is the money that comes from sales tax, and the governor put it in a savings and said every year we'll put enough out into a district, we'll divide it out by ADA, and then it'll buy down people's levies. So in years past, it's been $400,000 or $900,000 as a whole district. And so what that did was, if the levy was $1.6 million, then we gathered taxes on $1.2 million. We don't know how much this will be, but it does look like it's going to continue. I don't have the optimism that it's going to be as large as in years past, but this will be something that happens, and it will allow us to buy down the levy. So we'll pass a levy at 805, and then we'll find out what the tax relief amount is, and then you will only be taxed for the difference between those two amounts. If we don't pass a levy, that money only comes to us to be used for maintenance. We can't use it for anything else. So anything listed on our levy that was not for maintenance won't be funded through that. We don't use $200,000 worth of maintenance a year usually, but I guess we could try. Special education. So I think it's important to talk about how special education works. So for example, say we get a family of 7 kids that come to the district that they have never been here before, and 3 of them have very high special education needs. They walk in with a 30-page document explaining exactly what they're due by law, and that is what we are required to do. We have to adopt that IEP within 5 days and make any changes, and then we have to put into place any service that's outlined on that IEP. So if it says they get a one-on-one person, we have to get a one-on-one person on staff within those days to start that IEP. If it says that they get health services, like from a nurse, that has to start. If it says they get speech or OT, whatever it says, that's what we have to do. Now, we have the ability to work on that IEP at an IEP meeting, but if 4 kids come into our district and they seriously require a one-on-one paraprofessional with them every day, that is what we have to do. At the end of the day, one family could bring in over $100,000 worth of expense to meet the IEP's requirements that they brought from a different district. It's a real challenge.
So you estimate like 30,000 per para, per one-on-one?
Right.
32.
38.
38. With trailing benefits, yeah.
Yeah, with trailing. Including.
So I just need to say that anytime I'm estimating how much special education costs, I'm estimating with the clientele that we currently have, with the students that we know what they need, and we're going to try to meet those needs to the best we can. But it is not uncommon for the middle of the year for us to have a call and say, hey, we're moving to your district. We're going to send the IEP over, and then we just have to jump and figure out how to get that into place as quickly as we can. So it's a challenge to budget, to be honest with you. Some other unknowns. Due to the new size of our district, so we've gone from having over 100 employees that are insured to less than 100 employees that are insured. We don't know what our costs will be associated with health insurance anymore because we had a number. It was based on they call it a rate on what kind of health needs your staff has had. They give you a rate, they give you a percentage. This year, both new districts are getting new bids on health insurance for the staff that they have. We've budgeted what we believe will be enough, and the State Department of Education has kicked that up 10%. So there should be an increase in funding from the state for health insurance, but we don't know exactly what the health insurance is going to cost for our staff. And just so we're clear, the staff are paid for, but the families are not. We do not pay a single bit to the families right now for health insurance. And so that will lower our ability to negotiate with our insurance companies. Before we could say we want this, and they would give us packages or what we were looking for. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think what's going to be the case is they're going to come in and say A or B, or so we're going to have less options. That's not that big a deal, but it will impact our costs. And then there will probably be some other expenses that we just don't know about during the first year. One of those is down here is like food service. We got our bid for food service. The estimate for our district is that food service will cost us $50,000 more than we make by charging for hot lunches. So it costs us money to feed kids. That's a valuable thing. We want to feed kids, right? We want kids to have food so that they aren't hungry. There's a couple ways we can look at that. We can go with everyone eats and it drives down the cost, and it might cost us the same or less. Or we can just charge kids that don't meet the minimum requirement. We'll have to do some research on which one we want to do. But at the end of the day, every single thing that we are resetting up as a new district, it just has different expenses associated with it, and we're learning as we go. This is just one example, is the $50,000 for the hot lunch. And interestingly enough, it's only $50,000 if CV chooses to have Chartwells as well. If CV does not choose to have Chartwells, then it will be more, because part of that shared staff, we continue to share staff when we can, is the manager of Chartwells, and so both districts will pay for part of the salary. If CV says we don't want to have hot lunch, or we don't want to have Chartwells, I don't think that's going to happen. I'm just telling you, like, we don't have control of everything. Then it might cost us more to have Chartwells lunch.
And this was put out to bid by the district? One bid. That's all we got.
So this is our option. And we've talked about going back to like self-cook, but I don't know how long ago we sold I wasn't in charge, but we sold all of our equipment for cooking. So we no longer have the mechanical stuff to make meals anymore. So we're pretty locked into something like this. So here is the levy as I see it. It took a long time. I know the last levy looked a lot different, and I want to talk about that. So the last levy really emphasized cutting staff. And I think $800,000 was people. And I thought to myself, who would want to work at a district where we cut people, firstly, but secondly, who wants to send their student to a district where we don't have enough support for our students in education? So our goal this time was to really reduce the impact on student learning. And then also to really investigate thoroughly the costs of each of these items. So as for extracurricular and co-curricular activities, this is closer to what I truly believe it costs us to run extra and co-curricular activities. This is coach salaries, which are not great. That's not the majority of it. It's transportation, which is almost $300,000 for sports and co-curricular activities to bus transport everywhere. It is referees and facilities and safety equipment and hotels for state and district. It's new uniforms. It's insurance. It's all of those kinds of things. And so this is what I believe it costs us to run our co and extracurricular activities. Laid bare, it's a lot of money, but I want to be as honest as I can about what I think it's costing our district to have these programs. The next item is vans, and my hope is that if we could get 2 or 3 vans, we can really drive down the cost of that transportation from the co and extracurricular activities. And in a second, we'll go to a slide where I'll show one example of that. The library staff at $90,000, and that also includes paying for our membership to ValNet, which is where we get books. And then finally, the discipline support at GEMS. And those are the items that the levy will cost, and those are the items that we will not have if we do not have the levy. So there's no surprises there. And just, if you're wondering how we got to this place, Jordan Wassam has spent tons of time by herself and with me. She has actually projected 3 years of expenditures and used the percentages recommended by the State Department of Education in every single category that we have to determine what kind of funding and what kind of expenses we're going to have in every single area. There isn't a day that goes by that we're not calling different departments at the State Department of Education and asking them how we can increase the amount of money we get, how we can use the amount of money that we get. All of our investment pools, we have verified all the amounts and we're tracking those so we know that our investments are accurate. And then I just want to say that just even today, Jordan came over and was asking about this or that. Every day she finds a new way that we could possibly bring in more money than we were before from the State Department of Education. And in some ways, I feel like us both being pretty new at this has really caused us to make lots of phone calls and to do lots of research. And what I think that has led us to is lots of rabbit holes of what we could do better and how we can improve not just how we get money, but how we spend money, and we'll kind of talk about that next. And so this, Mr. Farmer's going to talk about our financial information a little further.
I guess I'm supposed to use this.
You could
now?
stand there,
Okay,
yeah.
and I'm going to need this, so I will. So, no, I'm good. So, look, this is the school audit report. This is the last year. These are historical, so they're in arrears, right? You got to close your year, you got to do all your financial reporting, and then you can have the audit done by a group of auditors. Our auditors are out of the Boise, Caldwell area, I guess. And based on my discussions with them, I think they've done a pretty good job. And look, I think that I ran for the school board primarily because I thought I could bring something of value to the district. And I think that there's been, I don't know if there's any of you in this room that feel this way, but I think I moved here 32 years ago. When I moved here, I had 4 kids in Grangeville schools. I've since sent those 4, and I've got 3 grandchildren that have graduated, and I got 3 more that are, or 4, and 3 that are coming. Thank you. Yeah, a lot, right? So I think I have a vested interest here. So when I moved here, I think I'm like a lot of people who moved here. I didn't want anybody to think I didn't put my pants on one leg at a time. So I really never told everybody my background or what I did or what I do for a living. I own a cattle ranch, and my family's been in the cattle business for, I think it's a total about 100 years or so. My uncle's family has the oldest brand in the state of Nevada. So we started there, but I decided that chasing cows around wasn't all that profitable and not that much fun. So I went to school and got degrees in finance and accounting and did graduate work in finance. My business was, and I've had several businesses. I've started 5 different companies. I've been a chief financial officer in all 5 of those businesses, and I've been a CEO, the chief executive officer, in 4 of them. I've sold the last one 2.5 years ago. I'm now unemployed and retired, mostly. And anyway, when I came here 32 years ago, the levy was still an issue, and there was community things, and So I said, okay, I want to go find out what's happening. So I went to the district, and we don't need to talk about names, and I don't want to go backwards. I want to look forward, but going back will have a little bit of historical perspective. I went to the district, and I met with the financial person, like Jordan would be, and I was told that my background wasn't adequate for me to understand the financials. So I just laughed, and I said, no, I think you can trust me. I think I'll understand the financials. And they would never give me a set of financials. Now, unbeknownst to the district at that time, my own accounting firm was Presnell Gage in Lewiston. So I went to my accounting firm, who I was paying to do my other accounting, and I said, is the audit information private information? Oh, no, it's public. I said, would you mind giving me a copy of it? I said, yes. And I told him what my concern was and what my analysis was from the numbers that I could get from the district. And they said, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. So I came back to the school board and I said, you realize that you could cut money here and here and here. And they said, thank you very much. We don't want to hear it. So for the last 30 years, I didn't care. I just said, you don't want to listen to what I have to say, so I won't talk to you because it's a waste of my time. So now I come in here to this district. We have a new superintendent, which I was thrilled to vote for. And I got all the financial information. For the first time, I met with Connie, and Connie says, what do you want to see? And I have a whole stack of stuff, right? And I got this audit, and so I can tell you that the numbers that we put up here are the best numbers that we can get. And I've been a financial consultant for companies in the middle market up to $1 billion, and I can tell you I've read lots of audits. Now, I usually can read an audit in about 3 or 4 hours from any company, and I can tell you what the financial condition of the company is when I'm done with it. It took me 12 hours to read this audit. And then it took me another 25 or 30 hours to really try to figure everything out. Now, what I'm trying to say to you, and I need to just give you a little bit of a background in accounting. There are two kinds of accounting. There is the accounting that's driven, corporate accounting, which is done by FASB, Financial Accounting Standards Board. It's a board appointed by the government, and those people meet, and they're the ones who set accounting policy for the private sector. Then to add even more complexity to it, they have a set of rules they call GAAP, Generally Accepted Accounting Principles. Now, I've worked with GAAP for 50 years. I went to the state statutes, and I found out that every district in the state of Idaho has to use GAAP. So I said, oh, this ought to be easy. I've been doing this for 50 years. Except what I didn't know, yeah, you're exactly right. What I didn't know, because I've never worked in this area, is there's an entirely separate board called GSD, Government Accounting Standards Board. The Government Accounting Standards Board does all of the financial rules for government agencies. So that's one complexity. Then you get into, there's two kinds of general ways to approach accounting. One is cash, and the other is accrual. Cash is easy. Most of the small businesses in this town use cash. I sell something, I get cash, I put it in my books. I pay a bill, I take the money out of my books. That's cash. Easy. I could teach all of you, believe it or not, I could teach all of you cash accounting in a couple of hours. Accrual is an entirely different concept. Accrual says, I've got money that I just sold something, but I'm not going to be paid for it for maybe 2 or 3 or 4 weeks or 2 or 3 or 4 months. So I still book it in my accounts, and it looks like I have the money, but I don't have the money because I haven't been paid yet. Now, to add that complexity onto GSB, GSB has a whole different set of what they call generally accepted accounting principles for GSB. And in GSB, they use accrual accounting almost exclusively. But the state of Idaho uses modified GAAP, and the federal government, for the federal government policies, use full accrual accounting. What that means is, just to give you one example, and then I'm going to show you a couple of examples of it. It means that when you look at a school financial report, or you look at one of these audits, and these are on the district website, if you want to see it, you can download it and look at it yourself. But they allow us they don't allow us, they require the district to use accrual accounting and accrue all of the income or and some of these schedules are This is like 60 pages. Some of the accrual is only for revenue, not for expenses, but the revenue accrual is 1 school year and 1 month, 13 months. Now, if you were working in the corporate sector, as I've worked my whole life, and I go to a bank and I say, here's my accrual accounting statements, and it shows my revenue for the next 13 months, the bank is going to say, you got to be kidding me. I'm not loaning you 10 cents on that. But that looks like, when you read these numbers, it looks like the district has a ton of money. No, we have a ton of accruals, but we don't have the money yet. And that's part of what Amanda was trying to tell you. Now, let me just explain. I'm not trying to tell you how difficult it is, but it is. But I want to show you an example. All right. Now, we'll go back to that last slide, Jordan. So look, one of the things that I've heard for years from the public, and I've been a member of the public, and I've been very critical, because I didn't think the district was being very transparent about all of these things, and that's why I decided to go on the board. This is right out of the audit report. It's on page 2. And it says that government auditing standards will always detect a material misstatement when it exists. I've heard people say, we need a forensic audit. We need to trail the money. We need to go figure out what they're doing. And it's not that we need to figure it out, because government accounting standards are rigorous, and right there our auditor put in writing that if there is a misstatement, they will find it. And we got a clean audit from our auditors. Now, what does that mean?
That's not entirely true. You have to read the whole sentence there.
Well, you have to read the whole
They give
sentence, but
reasonable assurance that they will detect it, but it is not, it actually says that if an audit conducted in accordance, which I said, it's not always going to detect it. It'll get most of it. It'll get the big things. But it's not going to get everything.
well, right. And the one thing it doesn't get, by the way, is fraud, right? So if somebody wants to commit fraud and absolutely end up going to jail, I suppose that wouldn't be covered. But typically, I would tell you from looking
It's a
at...
high level of
Right, it's a high level of...
Absolutely.
Let me put it to you this way. If you're a member of a board of directors of a company with shareholders, that would be good enough, because that's what you get from every audit that's out there. So there's no reason, in my opinion, to spend any money trying to figure out what happened 5 years ago or 3 years ago or 2 years ago, and I get it. I was a member of the public in those days as a taxpayer, and I was not happy with the lack of transparency that I was seeing in the district. So that's why I went and got on this board, is to try to add some of that. But you need to understand just how complicated this really is. So next slide. This is page 10 of the audit, and I know we may be able, you won't be able to see it if we get it small enough. This is modified GAAP accounting, or modified accrual. This is what's required by the state of Idaho. The government, on the other hand, when the rest of these pages, I could show you another page of this audit that is got the same identical heading, says it's actually reporting on the same things, and the numbers are different. I looked at that and it took me like 4 hours to say, wait a minute, no, that's not how accounting works. No. You have the same schedule, but you have 2 different accounting methods in the same report. To me, it's insanity, but that's what the government is. And I've had people I've told this to before this meeting, and they said, well, why don't we just change the accounting procedures? Yeah, you laugh, but I said, well, if that's fine, but we won't get any money from the federal government or from the state government, and I don't think we'll have a school district if we do that. So I would love to have a more simpler, straightforward accounting procedure like the FASB rules are, but we're not in FASB, we are in GSD, which is the government accounting rules. All right, now go down here to the bottom. All right, see that? I'm the kind of guy that when I see numbers, I want to look at every number and figure out where every number came from. Now you see that money there that says transferred out? That drove me nuts because it doesn't tell me what it is. So in order to find, remember I'm on page 10. In order to find out where that number came from, go to the next slide. You have to go to page 15, because that tells you what standard of accounting they're using, whether they're using modified GAAP or whether they're using full GAAP. So that's the first thing you got to do. So you got to sort through, another 5 pages of disclosure to figure out what kind of a method of accounting they use, and then go to the next slide. And then you have to go to the funds transfer page, which I think is 26. So now you have to go 11 pages more to find out where that money came from. And you find out, if you see that right down there at the bottom, where it says bus depreciation, that's the exact number that was on that last schedule on page 10. And in order to find out what that transfer out was, you have to go to this schedule to figure it out. And that $200,000 was a reimbursement from the state of Idaho to our district that will go into our bus depreciation fund so that we have that money to buy a bus. Now, if any of you would like to have this, I would. If any of you would like to have me try to answer some questions, I will be the first to admit I do not know everything about GSD accounting. But I did spend 50 years doing FASB accounting, and I think I know my way around accounting pretty well. I would be happy, if we need to, if any of you have a question, we could get on the phone with the auditors, and that's another thing, thanks to Amanda and Connie. They gave me the number of the auditor, and I have carte blanche. I can call the auditor anytime and ask any question that I want to ask. So am I satisfied that the district has spent every nickel in the last 20, 30, 40 years absolutely the way you or I would have spent it? I'm not sure. I can't tell. And you know what? I don't have time to figure that out. What I want to focus on is going forward. So one of the things that I've always done in every business that I've ever owned or that I've consulted with is make sure that the financial people understand the difference between accounting and financial management. Now, accounting is historical. When you get an accountant's statement, that's cast in stone. It can't be changed if it's correct. So everything that's on that statement that says we spent this much or we got this much revenue or we had this much profit or whatever it is, that's all history. That's already done. You can't do anything to change it. If you lost money, you lost money. If you made money, you made money. It's too late to change anything. But financial management, what I learned in graduate school, I had a professor that gave me a very good example. He said, if you were United Airlines chief financial officer and you wanted to practice financial management, you would figure out that 3 weeks from now in San Francisco, you have a 757 jet that's going to fly from San Francisco to New York. And you would also realize that you've got 30% of the passengers filling the plane and 70% are empty. So if you want to do financial management instead of accounting, an accountant will wait until the plane arrives in New York. Once it gets to New York, the accountants can do the numbers. How much fuel did it take? How many hours, man hours? How about the pilot and the stewardesses and the depreciation on the plane? And they can tell you everything you want to know. But it's too late to change anything. A financial manager says, I got a plane in San Francisco that in 3 weeks is going to go to New York and I'm going to lose my shirt. So I better do something about it now and make sure I don't lose my shirt when it arrives in New York. So this is an example of what I think the district is going to start doing. And Amanda and I have had a lot of talks about this, and I think she and I see eye to eye about it. And here's an example that I want to share with you.
10-minute warning?
10-minute warning. I'm almost finished.
Open it up to you guys.
And we'll open it up. So here's an example. We had our boys wrestling team qualify for state. So I had one of my grandsons. He was one of those wrestlers. We had 4 of them. We had to have a coach. We had to have 4 wrestlers. And they had to go to Boise. Now, if we took a school bus, guess what? $6.50 an hour, a mile, $23 waiting time, plus the bus driver's salary, plus the depreciation, plus everything else. That's why that number is $550,000. So without talking to me, or as far as I know, any of the members of the board, or without getting anybody's permission, Amanda took it on herself to say, nope, that's dumb. What we need to do is, and she gave permission to the wrestling coach to go rent an SUV and drive that SUV to Boise, because if you have the wrestling coach, we don't need a certified, licensed, whatever the bus drivers need. He could drive down there. They don't have to have an extra person. They don't have to haul that huge bus with all the diesel fuel down there. And so I'm going to be real quick, but that one decision saved the district $3,091. Now, if we can get those vans that we talked about in the levy amount, instead of sending choirs and less than a full bus load to activities, we can cut our costs dramatically. And I'm here to support the levy, and I've been opposing levies in the past. I'm supporting the levy because I believe, first of all, this is a new day. We've got a new district. We've got a new superintendent. We're going to have new financial people internally. And I'm going to be watching, because this is my money as much as anybody's that goes into these levies. I'm going to be watching the finances and make sure to the best of my ability that I can help the district. I will. And if I can't, well, we have to spend the money. We have to do it. But we're going to try to be better, and we're going to try to use financial management, more financial management and less accounting. Does that make sense? There you go. That's what I'm going to do.
Before I open it up, I just want to talk about one or two other quick little things, and then I'll go to that. So if you come down more, I don't think we'll do yours, but we'll go. So just some other ways we're going to do some financial management is we talked about restructuring that. We no longer have a bus supervisor. We're trying to cut wages there. We have a secretary and we have a mechanic. So that's one thing. We're limiting overtime. We're combining our maintenance person who used to work in 2 different districts. He's going to work for us only here. He's going to take on a bus route as part of his position. We're going to try to improve our tasks in every way that we can. Our special education department, we plan to fill the coordinator position with a teacher that we currently have, so that'll bring us down a teacher, hopefully. We also plan to ask the nurse to take on all of the Medicaid billing, which was done by the coordinator before. We just found out, go back one more. One of the things that we have right now is we're over on teachers, but our teacher down at GEMS that's acting as the dean of students or the vice principal, because we're going to only have 2 administrators next year, we'll have a position to possibly move her off of a teacher's pay onto an administrator's pay. So that will save the district, $50,000 that we don't have because we're over on teachers. So every time we make a decision like that, we try to save money. We will be sharing as much staff as we can with CV. And building back and forth between us to the best of our ability. We plan to share staff with GEMS so that we can have better elective classes down there and maybe not backfill teachers if somebody retires. Or we'll just do our best to use people the best we can. We just aren't going to automatically do things the way they've always been done. We're going to try to think very strategically about our staffing. And this is the one example that I think Roy was talking about before, but specifically at $6.79 a mile, our baseball team traveled 4,000 miles last year, and our softball team traveled nearly as far. At that rate, the travel expenses for baseball alone was $27,000. If we can get buses, and I know this doesn't include everything, it doesn't include us replacing the tires, which by the way, I've been working with local people again to try to use local businesses to provide our tires again. But what I'm telling you is if we can get vans, that cost could come down to close to $1,000 to $2,000 a sport. So these are places that we are going to try to save money so that when we ask you for money, you know that we're using the money to the best of our ability. And I'm up for a discussion anytime, and anyone can reach out. So does anybody have any questions for Mr. Farmer or I or anyone else?
I thought they were fundraising for all that travel.
No. They don't, no. We charged each, I don't remember if you remember how it worked, but Alyssa charged each sport $750 and all the rest came out of the district, and you guys agreed to pay for travel 2 years ago. And each sport at junior high paid $500 for their sport to travel, and every high school sport paid $750 for each squad. All the rest of it was paid for by the district.
I was told that baseball, that's why they do those pasta fundraisers and all of that. They were raising like $12,000 and that's going towards the travel.
It's not towards the travel at all. It goes towards things like an extra set of uniforms, or if they stay overnight somewhere, they might stay in a hotel. If they choose to go to an extra trip outside of our, but those are extra trips. Last year Alyssa implemented one trip outside of the zone, and if they chose to have more than that, then they paid for it, but if they didn't, they didn't. But this is our expense.
By the way, just so you know, I asked for all the sports records and all the expenses. Here they are.
So would baseball fit in 2 vans? And softball fit in 2 vans?
Sometimes they will. They're going in one bus. But right now we're doing it, this is the way we're saving this year, is that we send them to the same location at the same day. So if we play Kellogg, we send softball and baseball together so that they travel on one bus. Which will reduce, oh, this is last year's, right? I don't have this year's sports for spring, but we're already trying other things, but this will help a lot. Are there any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. Homeschool, when you have students that are homeschooled, and they, you're required to, if they want to come in and take band,
Yep.
then we have to do. I didn't see anything that, that impacted that cost. And
We
whether
don't,
or not-
we don't calculate how much they cost us because we already have the teacher, and so we just bring them in and put them into those courses. We do make it so that if you are going to take an online course, you have to be on site, so we're making sure kids aren't driving around and not being where they should be. But we do have kids that come and take 2 or 3 classes, and we encourage that just for their socialization, and we love having them, no problem at all. But there's nothing we can do about that. But I will say this, and it's not my problem, but with the new privatization bill where people receive money to go to private schools, once they enroll in a class at a public school, then they are no longer eligible for that money. So I don't know what will happen next year as we look to see if people will do it differently. I'm not sure, but we have a lot of kids that take 1 or 2 classes. They come and do guitar or band. It did.
953 pass?
I don't know what that one is. Last year they did the homeschool bill.
Right, but then they were trying to amend it this year so that they could participate.
I don't know. I know there was a change about what school kids could play sports at, but I was not aware that they had changed anything regarding the money. Anyway, yes, we do have them and we love having them. They're great kids, so no problem.
So I work at Grangeville Centennial Library.
Yeah.
And we use the ValNet system.
You're right.
And I know that it charges us per book, per patron on our accounts.
Yes.
Is there a thought or a price number that we know of if we got rid of ValNet and just kept our libraries? I mean, there's no necessary need, I would say, to.
It's a pretty minimal charge. We've done the research, and Holly's not here, but we've been doing all the research around $12,000. But our new student management system does appear to have a way that we could check books in and out without using ValNet. So it is an option. If we need to, we could go away from ValNet. What we do see is that there's a lot of kids that don't live in Grangeville, so they don't have access to Grangeville Centennial Library because they don't have.
The family would have to pay
Divide.
$40 for the year.
Yeah.
To have access at our library.
So we are discussing whether or not we want to use ValNet going forward. It's one of the options, and we have it all priced out. So yeah.
So House Bill 934 passed and was signed into law April 2nd of this year. It's a cleanup bill for the House Bill 93, so it explicitly states that students using the tax credit for private school or homeschooling remain eligible to participate in public school sports and extracurricular activities.
Right, which is what I thought. And I knew that happened, but it's not about the classes. So
and it allows families to pay fees to IDLA
Yep.
and get reimbursed.
Right, so they won't get our free classes or our reduced price classes, but they can still take those classes online. But that's not the same as enrolling in choir or band or English. Those are different. So once they do that, then they aren't eligible. We're talking about homeschool, dual enrolled. We'll take them to play sports. I'll take them to take classes too, but it might reduce their ability to have that money. I'll take anybody.
Any comments?
Concerns?
If a business in town wanted to sponsor or buy one of the vans, is that an option?
That would be a great option. So one thing the 120,000, we've already started bidding them out just because we wanted to kind of know how much it would cost us if it was possible. We've done a lot of legwork there. We're thinking we can get them for about $62,000 a piece, so we're hoping to get 2 with the levy. However, I honestly think 3 or 4 would be amazing. And I know the boosters are considering, and I'm not saying helping us to lease one for a while. And so that might get us halfway to 3. And so, yes, if anybody wanted, and we would love that.
And they can wrap it.
I would happily let them do whatever they wanted.
How about lights?
Huh?
How about lights?
Lights, yes.
How would that work insurance-wise?
We're going to have to get different insurance. I mean, we're going to have to insure the vans, that's for sure. It will be a cost, but it's certainly not $6.80 a mile, so it's still going to be way better. We have lots of other regional districts that use them. Nespers has vans. They were actually, the irony is that we were kind of told not to get vans, and that was fine, but we would co-op wrestling with Nespers because that's what happens with small schools. And then Nespers kick-in was that they provided their vans. And so we transported our kids on vans as long as we co-opted with Nespers. So that seemed crazy to me. So we can have our own. When we go to other events and you pull into a parking lot, it's full of vans from other schools. We have to be smart. So we're going to work on that. Yes.
I've had quite a few people complain to me that our sports goes too far. Why are we going to Kellogg? Why can't we play Cottonwood and CV? How do you answer that? I've tried with, hey, there's only 5 schools our size in northern Idaho if we want to play.
Well, and the state of Idaho, the IHSAA, sets up who's in our league. So we have to play our league competition. That's not set up by us. So once you play in the Idaho High School Activity Association, and so those are our districts. We can't change that Priest River is in our district, that St. Mary's is in our district, that Kellogg is in our district. Those are set in stone.
But change it, because we used to play Cottonwood and Lapway and all of those. And I have a hard time answering it.
We don't have control over the districts and the way that leagues are set up in the state of Idaho. It's just outside of our control.
So why do we play?
Well, I guess we don't have to. If we don't want to run it, we don't want to have extracurricular activities. We don't have to have them. And I think that Levy is saying that exact thing. Like, do we want this? Is this what we want as a community? Do we value it?
Yes,
and
we do.
and I think we do. But that's up for the voters. But what I'm saying is that is the system in which we are set up. And I think I can speak to Coach Adams. We have to play people outside of our region if we want to have the best opportunities for our kids to play at state, right? That kind of was one of the things that we got set up for this year.
There's 2 ways of looking at it, I suppose. Yeah, you could do that. I can't do it.
No, you cannot.
Because I'm the smallest, right? So I do have to travel. But if you're saying volleyball, basketball, stuff like that, yeah, we could. That's, their benefit is that's all those smaller schools. Yeah, we can do that. And I think they try to do that as much as possible in the last.
For our out of league games, we go to play them as much as we can. But we wouldn't go to state if we don't have a league.
Yeah, our league is our league. You have to have a district winner to see who goes on. There has to be a winner and loser.
Well,
that kind of thing. But I guess I don't understand what they're asking. Are they asking like in girls basketball, if we want to play?
We used to always play Cottonwood and Lapway and all of those.
We play them.
So
we
why
still
do we have to go to Bonner, soccer goes to Bonner's Ferry.
Well, that's their league. That's their
league.
League, yeah.
So there's a formula the IHSAA has. It's based
Yep.
on community
size, student
kids in the
enrollment,
class, how many sports you have at the school. There's this formula, and that might be something that IHSAA, you might work with them on changing that, but it's very hard for a school to change the different districts that they're
I don't want to change anything.
Yeah.
I am being yelled at by people because I support all of the sports and I go to them.
I think it's important to recognize, though, that level of competition is one of the ways that we get good, but also it brings a lot of opportunities to our students to play at the level that they should. And if you walk out and look in the arcade, and I'm not saying this is every kid, but we have a whole wall of people who got to go and play college sports, and that's because they played. Yeah. Well, I don't know about going on to pro. I won't say say that, but I will say that they've played college.
Kristen
Yeah,
Van Dresch played here, she played pro.
but it's not a ton that's gone to pro. But it's
Well-
good. But I do think it's a great opportunity to go play college sports. But bigger than that, if we want our kids to be looked at for anything like that, that we have to play within the district, in the league that they place us. That's my answer.
I'm all for it,
Yeah.
but it's like, how do I argue that? Because they say, I'm playing favoritism. Well,
We don't think it.
3 more minutes here. You go.
Just as a coach over the past few years and as a former female college athlete,
Yeah.
kids that go to college on an athletic scholarship have a higher rate of graduating and being a professional person in their life.
Yes.
And you can just put that out to them and be like, if we play in leagues that get our kids scholarships, they have a brighter future. And it's just a fact. They can go look it up on the internet.
they don't care because their taxes
It's-
are being used
it's
to drive
true,
to
yeah.
Bonner's Ferry.
Yeah.
And I do think, and this is the thing, I do think that there are people that don't want to, that believe that, and that we're not going to convince everybody of anything, and that's not what this is about for us. We're just here to explain what the levy is for and how the finances work. And I can't convince, nor is it my job to convince anyone to vote for or against the levy. I'm just a fact provider today, so all I can say is that the reason we play those places is because that's the league that we were placed in. And I hope that they would do some research to figure out whether that's something of value to them or not. Valerie?
I have a lot of community members that always ask, like, if we end up getting more money from state or federal funding, how does that impact what we have asked for if we do pass a levy? Does that change the levy, and are we allowed to give that money back to the voters so that they are able to have the money back?
If the things on this list were paid for, right there, if the things on this list are paid by an outside source, and we would give that money back, I do anticipate us getting the second disbursement from the Idaho County Commissioners for the forest funds. However, I would really like it if we set that aside, and so we knew how much we needed to ask for the next levy, instead of eyeballing it out there and going, we need 1.5 million. If we set that aside and said, we're going to use this second payment next year, we know how much we have. If we could have that much forethought about our money, so that we knew what we really needed to ask, so people would trust us when we asked them for money, that would be the ideal. So yes, we are going to get more money for sure, but the things on that levy have no primary funding revenue stream. That's why they're on there. They're not paid for by state. They're not paid for by anything but local funds. If these are things we want to have in our community, these are the things that we have.
Yep.
And I just wanted to throw this up here. This is our levy this year compared to other levies in the area. It's the first time that we are lower than Cottonwood. And it
First time.
doesn't include, just so we're sure, this doesn't include the buy down, which we don't know how much that will be. But say we got $200,000 in the buy down, then our levy amount would be based on $605,000, not on the $805,000. So I really have tried hard to get us in a reasonable amount. And then if you go one more down, I think. So this is the lowest levy we've had ever.
Granted, it's our district, it's separate from CD.
Right.
Correct, but even if you
But
go
even
back,
with that, yeah.
it's, I mean,
And let me also say,
it's
one
lower
thing,
than CV's.
one thing that really was an eye-opener to me, when you run a privately held business, you have a line of credit. And if you ever get in trouble, can't make payroll, go to the line of credit, right? We don't have a line of credit. This district operates on 3 months' salary and expenses. That's the total reserves that we have right now. So we can pay bills for 3 months. If some money doesn't come in or something were to happen, nobody gets paid. And I'm very uncomfortable with that because I'm used to working with a much bigger cushion. Anybody who's done accounting and had been in business, you would look at that. I was shocked. And that's what we've got. Now, we'd like to have more. And I think we should have a little bit more. But we're trying to run the district as efficiently financially as we possibly can. That's the idea.
And
by
in the
way,
past, we
the thing-
depleted that.
Huh?
In the past, we depleted that account.
Right, we have.
We were at
And I will also say, I've told Amanda this, I said, every company I've ever been associated with, every employee I've ever managed, I had one company, I had 250 employees. I told them, I said, if you spend your money, the company's money, like you would spend your own, you will never have a problem with me. And that's the standard and the imprint I hope to leave on the district.
Sure.
I had a point of clarification on the levy amounts. So the $550,000 for the extracurricular that's based off of what last year's cost was. But if you get the vans with the $120,000, won't you be able to reduce that?
Hopefully, but I can't, I'm just gonna go with what our expenses have been. Hopefully, we might be able to get a couple extra vans. I don't know. The goal would be to be as wise as we can. The other thing is that, like, we are always asking our coaches and our teams to fundraise. That is what they do, and they work hard at it. They really do. But we pay coaches $4,000 a season. That's what we pay coaches. I'm not saying I'm going to raise their pay, but I'm saying when you pay somebody $4,000 a season to coach for that whole season, and then all summer long you ask them to fundraise until their eyes want to pop out of their heads, like, we have to come to some sort of an idea where if we really want sports, this is what it costs. And I want to find what that number is by having a real year of us figuring that out and doing right by our coaches, our community. If we ask people to pay for a levy, we shouldn't ask them to fundraise out their ears all summer long. It's not fair. We should run a levy that explains exactly what we're spending, and then not ask every small business in this community, hey, we need $500, hey, we need $500. It's really exhausting for our community to do both ways. So I would rather we figure out what sports cost and we try to do it as honestly as we can.
Yeah.
Just to put a little bigger spin on this, maybe, Gunther Williams, I'm one of the trustees for the hospital.
Right.
Over 60% of our patients have Medicaid and Medicare. The government only pays less than half or less than the cost of the actual cost to work at the hospital. So a bigger footprint is, if we don't attract young families with the better insurances, you lose that as well. And we're doing our best to add services and help out, but we can only do so much with our current population. So we need to attract, those younger families, kids, Blue Cross, Blue Shield, as much as I hate those guys too. But it doesn't matter. They're better payers, and this is how we do it. So it's not just about, this stuff. It's about attracting people.
A community. It's about having a value. A community with all the things we need. Yeah, I would agree. That's a big part of it. Anyone else?
We good?
Mr. Farmer
Yes.
seems to be the one that has the knowledge here. Unfunded mandates by the state.
Federal.
Feds.
Federal.
It's feds.
No state.
Well, at
problems?
least for special ed, it's federal.
There's no state issues with.
I don't think we
stuff?
get
Well, the state
hardly
keeps
anything.
begging the federal for more money. So they promised when IDEA came out, they said 40% funded. It's been 17 or 19% since then. It hasn't been the 40.
And it's not just that the IDEA is that way. It's that every time a case comes to any court at any level to determine whether something should or should not be provided, the court always says you can't use cost to limit what kind of services you provide. Every court case says you have to pay, you have to pay, you have to pay. But nobody's giving us the money that they said that they would. So at this point, rural communities across the nation are using their general ed funds to supplement special education because of the way it's gone.
So then we have an attorney general for the state. How come he doesn't sue the federal government to get those dollars?
That's above my pay grade. I will tell you this though, I think this is I have my son-in-law works for the state of Idaho. He's a Medicaid administrator for disabled children. He's been there 14 or 15 years. I've had a lot of discussions with him about this. For the first time in state history, the Medicaid budget is bigger than the school budget. And it's not going to stop if they continue to do what they're doing. They require us to get these services. We have no choice. If we have a school door down here that's unlocked, we have to provide those services. And if we didn't have that probably $1.5 million that it's going to cost us, so we're not going to get reimbursed from anybody, we wouldn't need a levy. But we do.
And every time we don't provide some, we get called in to do an improvement plan. It's not an option for us to bow out. We pay the price.
But somewhere there has to be some pushback.
I hope that there is.
And it doesn't seem like the state is supportive of helping in that regard.
The state did pass a bill just this year that allows us to apply for money for a high-need student that costs extra money. They have not outlined how much money that is, how we apply for it, or how many of us will get it. But it's up to $100,000. Will that cover this? Not even close. But, yeah.
Well, and I will also say, and I can't speak for the board, I'm one trustee, but I've told Amanda, I know Kyle Harris, who's our District 7 rep, and I know Charlie Shepard pretty well. I've known Charlie's dad for 30 years, and I know Cindy Carlson fairly well. And we're gonna talk to all three of them. I mean, I don't know what else to do. We can't really get congressmen and senators very often to come here unless they want our vote. And I don't think they want to hear about our problems, but I'm hoping, I talked to Amanda and I would bring this before the board, is that next year for the next legislative session, that we should try to host a lunch just for those three legislators and bring them here and let them hear about what our issues are. So when they go to the legislative session in January, they will have at least our opinion and our issues, so maybe they can think about that as they vote and do their legislative business. Other than that, I've learned I'm not Don Quixote. I don't want to joust windmills.
So Superintendent Critchfield's been asking for $50 million to help with the special education barrier. And Senate Bill 1288 passed, and it created $5 million. That's the one she was talking about.
We're not sure how much money I know that each district can apply for up to $100,000. I'm understanding. I go to the post-legislative show next week, but that's my impression. How we can apply, who can get it, it's all still a little bit of a mystery. No, it won't cover this. And you're right. It's untenable that we can't keep it up. So.
We good?
We appreciate you
All
all
right.
coming, and if you have future questions or anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm Amanda Bush, and my email is busha@sd244.org. You can reach out and let me know what your questions are, what your thoughts are, and we will answer them.
Yeah.
There's a form on the website, too.
There's a form on the website.
Form on the website.
Michael created it, because I won't pretend that I did. But what you can do is go to our website, and you can type in any question you have, and we will get back to you and answer your question. So that's out there also. We plan to do a couple other of these, like going to other groups and just talking to them. So we will put out when we're having it, and if something comes to mind between now and then, don't hesitate to let us know. We want people to be informed.
Yeah, and if you're a member of a civic club or a civic organization and you would like a speaker to come and talk about this, let us know.
Can we get the yard signs? The yard signs?
That is not our group. We don't promote that, but you might be able to talk to that guy.
Yeah.
We are just informers of what the levy is, but there are groups out there that are very pro-levy. That's not necessarily us.
And I kind of want to tag on to what Roy said, is this is a new day, right? And like going forward, one of our biggest issues is we need some stability in this district. So since 2006, when this levy thing started going and we started fighting amongst ourselves, we have gone through in 20 years 10 superintendents. We're on number 10 right now. You can't make any progress with that. We're just constantly treading water. So now we're kind of on our own. I think we're forward thinking, and we just want some stability so we can make these good decisions, think long term, see success in this community. So hopefully we can get that. But we need a little bit of money to do that. Yeah.
And one last thing, I would encourage any of you, if you hear negative talk about the levy and any misconceptions that are different than what you've heard tonight, please send them our way. That's one of my biggest pet peeves, is to hear false information and that being a reason why someone won't vote for the levy, won't support the levy. So please come talk to any of us, Mrs. Bush, our GEMS principal.
Will this be
Thank
on
you.
the website?
I was just gonna ask that.
We'll put the presentation on website, but a lot of information is already out there, but we can put this presentation up as well, yep.
On the menu, there's just a Levy tab, and yeah, these videos.
And if you want the audit, it's on the district website.
And the website's just sd244.org.
It is for now, yep.
For
Can I
now.
just say, I have reached out to board members numerous times and never got a response. So I would be most appreciative.
Almost never
if
got
you
a
would-
response.
If those board members would actually respond, because I can't tell you how many emails I sent and got no response back. B's usually the only one that will respond to me in the past. So thank you that you're willing to take those questions and do the hard things.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for coming.
Have a good evening. Be safe.